refresher here for some people or some new information just about downward facing dog. So downward facing dog is really hard on the wrists for a lot of people because we're actually in what we call wrist extension. So we're flattening and we're coming into extension. And some people who have too much range in their wrists get a lot of pain no matter how strong their wrists are here. There are gloves you can buy to stop your wrists moving too much. Always contact me if you need more advice on that. I had to use them at one point when I injured my thumb during lockdown. So when we do this, we're in wrist flexion. So that's why we use that pose, gorilla padahastasana, to stretch out the wrists after downward dog. But that pose, again, is not suitable for everyone. So you stretch your wrists this way. Now, another way to strengthen the wrists is to get a dumbbell. Now, this dumbbell is 1 kilo. That's a bit too heavy. I wouldn't recommend a kilo. I'd recommend half a kilo. And you can do this sort of thing to strengthen your wrists again. So that can help strengthen your wrists for downward dog and other poses. This sort of thing is really good for strengthening wrists for most people. This sort of thing, working those wrists. The other thing that can be good is coming into a tabletop and just lifting the heels of the hands and the thumbs up. Lifting them up and down, but keeping the fingers down. Obviously, the more weight you lean into the hands, the harder it is. Try not to bring the shoulders way past the wrists though. Some people can do this in a full plank. I can only do it with one hand, to be honest. It's very strong. Some people will build up to that. I haven't, and I'm not too fussed about it. But that's something to strengthen the wrists as well. So with your downward dog, if you struggle with the regular way of doing it, one of the best options is a chair. Now, this is not a fancy yoga chair. It's actually an $8 or $9 one. I think it was $8 or $9 from Kmart. Here in Australia, you'll know Kmart. And then we're taking weight off the wrists here, but we can still get that stretch in the posterior chain. And we can still, work our dog out, maybe doing a single leg dog. Less stable though, so be careful, make sure the bottom leg's flat. Some people prefer that. You can hold the outside. Make sure you're on a stable surface though. Just test it out if that works for you. Now, the other option with downward dog, some people like this option too. They like to have their hands on blocks because it just makes gravity a bit friendlier and more to your advantage. Less weight on the wrists. Some people also do this. That can be nice too. And the other thing I've often done in Pilates, in particular for people with planks, is if you're holding dumbbells, you are not in extension. You've actually got neutral wrists. Yeah. So you could do downward dog like that. And a plank like this. Takes pressure off those wrists. That is another option. You could do a dolphin and downward dog on your elbows. Now, it's actually quite a challenging pose. I absolutely loathe this pose. Some people love it. It's very hard on your back and your core, I think. But some people like to do this instead of downward dog, or just like to break downward dog up with a bit of dolphin. Make sure your head's not on the ground. It might be on the ground, but what I mean is make sure there's no weight in your head. It's not headstand, and even in headstand, we don't want much weight on the head. And there's no headstand in this course. So really pushing through. There's your dolphin. I hope that's helped with downward dog. Main thing is we want to get a nice stretch down the whole back side without back pain, without shoulder and wrist pain. And you always know that You don't have to stay in downward dog or any pose. You can come out. You got to do what works for your body. It's your practice, no one else's. And downward dog is actually a modern day yoga pose. So the ancient yogis didn't do down dog. It came from the Krishnamacharya legacy, the father of modern yoga. A lot of these poses we do are modern day yoga poses, and they're not necessary. If you want to practice yoga, you don't have to do them. You don't have to do anything really, but just know that they're a modern pose. If you don't practice downward dog, you're no less of a yogi. But I just wanted to give you some options there because it's a challenging pose for most of people. I mean, obviously, if you do gymnastics and you do handstands, downward dog's going to be a piece of cake, but most adults are not in that category. Hope that helps with downward dog and wrist issues. The gloves actually, they're called WAG gloves, wrist assisted gloves. They've got this special padding on them and they can be good as well.